All right, everybody. So I want to welcome everybody to the ending keynote, AI and the public procurement evolution, balancing innovation, security, and strategy. We're looking forward to engaging with everyone. Two ways you can engage. First way is coming off of mute and speaking up. That's the preferred way. Other way is you can communicate using the chat feature. If you are using chat feature, make sure you have everyone selected so that everyone can see your message. Also, if you run into any technical issues, you can message me. I'm Charles, and I can work with you to fix those issues. But let me go ahead and kick it over to our presenter. We have Luis Diaz.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me in this transition between morning and afternoon. Seems like a lot of people are joining in the morning. Um, I have a very interesting setup, so I will be looking here and here. So apologies if you see the side of my face. It's just because I have a very interesting three-screen setup. So first of all, thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. And I want to start by thanking the NIGP and Charles and Jeff and the rest of the team who are, putting up a great show and a great event. So, a round of silent applause for them. That'd be amazing. Um, yeah, so without further ado, let's get started on this very interesting topic. I put a little bit about who I am, as a lot of I haven't had the opportunity to meet a lot of people present. Um, I am currently in the private space as CEO of Blue Creative Digital Technologies. Um, Throughout my career, won a couple of awards because of the innovations that we're doing in AI, accessibility, and strategic communications. Done a couple of chats, particularly at the CXO conferences, Aboriginal and minority supply councils. Um, and the reason why we won these awards is because of one of the tools that I'll be talking about lightly this today, which is called Offerio, and also Neuro AI, which is our award-winning accessibility compliance tool that uses generative AI. So that's really cool. But the reality is, I do come from where most of you currently sit. So I served as an advisor under the Quebec government under Premier Charest, as well as a chief of staff for the Delegate Minister of Economy, Science and Innovation in Quebec. And before that, had a couple of roles at the United Nations, where one of them was to generate RFPs and handle procurement in the space of civil aviation. So um, imagine having to deal with vendors and suppliers. I had to deal with them throughout the Americas, United States, Mexico, all the way to Argentina. So that was quite the situation, having to deal with all these different ways of thinking and managing RFPs and proposals. So that was quite the learning experience, and what got me kicked off into the whole RFP and procurement world. Um, if I'm not busy enough, I teach sometimes at McGill University when I'm back in Canada. I'm currently based out of Miami now, but when I do back to Canada, I'm out of McGill University. I teach at the graduate level. Um, and that keeps me very happy because that keeps me in touch with what's new, hot, and trending. So very much love that. So thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. So let's get started. AI has already entered our procurement landscape, but the way we integrate it will definitely determine whether it empowers us or whether it disrupts us. And I think this is profound words, because we are at that sort of fork in the road, where certain people are deciding that AI is the enemy. Certain people are saying, "Hey, AI is our friend. How can we empower ourselves to use it?" And that's a little bit about what we're gonna talk about today. So I'm just gonna put a couple of points on the screen as to what my talk today is gonna cover. Obviously, feel free to jump in at any point in time to ask questions. I love questions, so it's not an issue. And there will be some time at the end as well for us to sort of do more of a Q&A. So let's talk about the procurement dilemma in the AI age. when I saw this, I laughed out loud. And people in the office were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, this is profound, and this is profound because this is the first dilemma. It is, how do we handle the potential issues that can be created by artificial intelligence? There is a sense of distrust with artificial intelligence, and I believe that when it comes to artificial intelligence, it's but an empowerment tool, and it gives us back tenfold of what we give it. There's this whole conversation going online about, should you be polite with your AI? Should you ask please? And the reality is that artificial intelligence gives back what you give it. So when you allow it to be the persona that is going to be helpful to you, to your needs, to your necessities, it really helps. And it all starts with that please. Something so simple, something so innocuous, but yet it goes far. And so why do I bring this up? Because let's talk about what the opportunity is. This is what the opportunity is. The opportunity in the procurement world is, from the vendor side, is faster RFP writing, smarter evaluations of the needs of an RFP, reduced manual burden. Now, this also works on the government side. Faster creation of an RFP, smarter writing, smarter evaluations, reduce manual burden. So, do we trust the free open tools that weren't designed for procurement? And I think that that's the challenge that we've seen throughout these last couple of days, where we talk about free ChatGPT or free Perplexity, or should we even talk about DeepSeek? And I think that that is the major dilemma. When we're talking about free tools that were not designed for procurement, we are running the risk of working with a very generalist tool that will not give us the specific needs that we have for procurement processes and RFP. So how do we keep control over data compliance and fairness? Well, the short, extremely quick answer is we pay for it. The long, more complex answer is we build frameworks and we build structure so that we can rely on the tools that we have. I mean, we've been doing this for years on a procurement level, where we have tools that help us not only make decisions, but also keep these decisions transparent, reportable, auditable. And I think that that's the number one important thing. And that's one of the biggest things that ChatGPT and the free tools in the market don't permit us to do, is to keep that accountability. So that's where the limitations of general purpose AI start to kick in. Give you guys a minute to read this. And so the reality is that the current AI structures, the way they are, they're very cool. They're very fun. Let's create images. Let's clean up our letter. I have an angry letter that I need to send out. Please don't get me fired. Please make this as polite as possible. And I think that these are, as far as we've gone in the development of our comfort level in AI. And I think that we now need to start looking at refining the tools that we have. So why ChatGPT or other LLMs alone don't solve our procurement challenges? The reality is they have a lack of context. General GPTs are made general. So you cannot get great business results from a tool that's recommending restaurants or what sites to visit in Denver on the next, NIGP conference. So I think that that's one of the biggest challenges, is the tool is not made for it. If anybody's ever tried to fix, a broken something in your house with just a screwdriver, the chances are you realize quickly that you need more than just a screwdriver. And that applies to technology. We also have security concerns. Now, cloud-based tools for the most part, can violate the data handling policies. And a lot of platforms will talk about distillers. Now, that's a lot of advanced. I don't like to use the technical jargon. I'm not a technical person. Um, but these distillers, which are supposed to be filters of what information goes into the servers of OpenAI or ChatGPT or Perplexity or you name it, um, there are no guarantees that they can filter fully all the data and all the information. So when you're sending information, there is no sense of guarantee that the information is going to be kept private, even if you pay for ChatGPT or whatnot. Um, if you haven't seen this in action, I strongly recommend that you go to ChatGPT and ask it something, harmless as, do you know who I am and do you know who my teammates are? Or I have a project and who should I be working closely with? And a lot of times you'll see that ChatGPT will start answering nonsense, which we call in the industry hallucination. It'll start mentioning things like, hey, you know what? This is an IT project. Why don't we work with John from IT? Well, it's a good guess, ChatGPT, that there's probably somebody in a IT department called John. That's just a probability answer, not so much a specific answer of what you know of me. So without this lack of information, we're starting to see that it starts making things up. Combined with IP seepage, intellectual property seepage, or private information seepage, uh, some of the data does end up going through servers. So this makes our data 100% not private. And when you actually start looking into the fine print, there is a underlining tone that ChatGPT and other online GPTs will do their very best to distill the information and not use what you give it to train its models. But the very best, is again a very relative soft metric that cannot be defined, is not accountable, definitely not auditable. And then we have accuracy. I personally love tricking my GPT. It's like talking to that offbeat neighbor, that has an intense army story, and then all of a sudden turns around and talks about his petunias or something. Uh, Data accuracy in business is extremely key, and reliability is very important. And yet, the number one issue of GPTs uh, is made up of the type of information that it gives you. The mission of a GPT is to satisfy you, the inquirer, and it cannot accept that it cannot fulfill its mission. So what does that mean? If it doesn't have an answer, it will make one up. At times, the answers it gives are so plausible that users accept them as reality. And now we have the source of misinformation. This is why you'll see nowadays notices on all GPTs verify information as GPTs make mistakes. And this is a reality. The hallucination is a very, very big issue. So where are we at with this? Well, procurement doesn't just need AI, it needs purpose-built AI that understands the structures, constraints, and compliance needs of the profession. And I find this very, very important because as time progresses, we're starting to see a lot of tools come out, but they are at best a wrapper that talks to ChatGPT, and at worst, just ChatGPT. So where does that leave procurement officers and what are they really asking for? I think what we're looking for in AI is to streamline our processes. We're looking to ensure that it can handle, through machine learning and automation, the more menial tasks that take away a lot of time from our team members. The gargantuan efforts of having to process really basic data. And I think that that is where AI has its first shining moment of opportunity within our industry. So what is really needed? As AI enters the procurement space, what's truly needed isn't just innovation, it's responsible integration. So procurement professionals, like all of us here and me at one point, we're not asking for flashy tools. We're asking for reliability, transparency, auditability. First, we need platforms that align with our current policy frameworks and scoring systems that already are in place. Aren't just guidelines, they're the foundations of fair, defensible decision making when we do procurement, when we put out tenders. Second, we have to avoid the trap of full automation. The best AI systems are not decision makers yet. They're decision support tools. They assist procurement teams by streamlining routine tasks, surfacing relevant information, and maintaining human judgment at the center of it. So what it does is it really empowers the teams to make way better decisions faster, be able to ensure that they're not missing out on the minor details because they're overwhelmed with, 300 proposals and they have to go through the nitty-gritty of all that. So that to me is very, very big. But finally, any solution worth adopting must work within the existing workflows. So procurement teams can't afford to stop everything and rebuild from scratch. I mean, wouldn't that be beautiful? We can just say, hey guys, we're taking off a month to redo everything. Yeah, that would not work. What is needed are tools that respect institutional processes, integrate seamless to what we have going on, and enhance the efficiency without adding complexity. And that's a standard we should be holding AI to when we start looking at it, when we integrate it into procurement. So while many procurement departments are still debating whether AI should be part of any type of procurement process, vendors have already adopted it, and they're using it to generate faster, more compliant, and more persuasive proposals. And I hate to break it to everybody, but AI-generated proposals are no longer a futuristic concept. They're here. And if your team doesn't have the tools or knowledge to identify, assess, or audit AI-assisted submissions, you're already starting to be behind. So today I will talk very lightly on OfferioAI, which is why I've become a subject matter expert on both sides of the market. But tools like Offerio are enabling vendors to submit proposals that mirror evaluation frameworks, optimize keyword alignments, respond in hours versus weeks or even months. That shifts the entire balance of the process. And so the question is no longer if AI is being used, it's whether the public sector is equipped to respond to it fairly, securely, and transparently. This is a new asymmetry in procurement, and it's widening fast. Procurement teams don't evolve in parallel. We risk unfair scoring, missed red flags, and a total loss of control over the integrity of the process. So what's happening on the vendor side before AI? I'm just gonna recap because we all know very well what's going on here. Before AI, vendors were already invested heavily in maximizing their success rates. This isn't new. This was just manual. So vendors were already building sophisticated ecosystems to give themselves an edge in procurement, like professional proposal writers. Um, Large vendors have long invested in professional proposal teams, people whose entire job is to read an RFP, interpret it, apply it through the Shipley process, make sure that they understand the scoring criteria, review the go, no-go stage, and make sure that they have a team ready for red ink. And if everything goes well, then craft compelling responses that hit every mark. These aren't project managers or service teams. They're professional storytellers for procurement. And we have taken this so far that there are companies out there that all they do is work on the proposal and then they go into subcontract. I see it every day. I've been part of bids where there's companies who don't have an individual who has ever held a shovel or has an individual who's ever turned on a computer for coding, and yet they are front and center in multiple bids. We have joint bids, which allow vendors to pool strengths You saw the rise of that when two or more companies are trying to partner to present a stronger combined offering. Maybe one is stronger at the proposal writing, the other one is stronger at the delivery or execution of it. We'll see that as joint bids, we'll see that as subcontractor bids. It's a smart move, but it's one that takes a lot of planning, coordination, and they are moving towards that. And we see it more and more. And then, like I mentioned before, the procurement groups, which I kind of pressed too fast there, but the procurement groups. And procurement groups, all they do is pop out proposals day in and day out. A lot of them have managed to automate certain processes internally through tools that they use for, copy paste or some type of analysis, etc. But that was before AI. So now that we have AI in the game, what we're seeing is an evolution of that same vendor side advantage, but turbocharged. So automated proposal generation is here, and I think is here to stay. Tools like the one that I will talk about, or there's two other competitors that I am aware of in the market, generally speaking. They're helping vendors draft compliance structured proposals in a matter of hours, not days or weeks. The AI-powered bid matching helps vendors find and prioritize the RFP most worth pursuing. What does that do on the side of the procurement teams? Well, you're now being put down the pecking order. And so it's limiting the type of contractors that you can use for your bids, because it may not be as convenient, it may not be as profitable for the contractor, let's say. And so by actually being able to make these analyses on a faster basis, you will see that certain bids will have 100, 150, 200 interested parties. Maybe 60, 70% of those interested parties will submit a bid. And then as far as recently, our company, we saw a bid in Northern Canada with 3 bidders. Why? Maybe not as profitable. Compliance mapping and auto scoring. So the tools that are being built help scan RFPs, extract mandatory information to submit, and the rated criteria, and ensure that every response hits those targets. This means that vendors are essentially reverse engineering the scoring system and doing it faster than a human could ever do. And that brings a data advantage and iterative learning. The more proposals a vendor writes, the smarter their AI gets. Tools like Offerio, for example, learn from successful past responses and continuously improve future drafts based on what worked. And it is no longer just about content, it's about the strategic iteration. So think of it this way. Certain bids that we put out when I was in procurement were 80% boilerplate, copy paste, and then the rest was, what is the objective, what is the context, what is the exact deliverable. Now the vendors are doing the same thing back at us. That's why that cartoon was hit home when I saw it, because we use AI to make a simple point form request into a long RFP, and then the vendor will use AI to grab that massive RFP and reduce it down to a point form request. So this is where we'll start talking a little bit about purpose-built alternatives. There are less than a handful of companies that are engaging in this space, although there are a number of them that claim to run AI. It's part of the noise and a buzzword in order to get potential onboarders. The majority of the so-called AI players are using a search and prompt feature to work on existing copy-paste type databases for proposal creation. I'll be frank and transparent. I'm only aware of 3 players, and us being one of them, that are in the space of true proposal automation through AI. Of the ones that I have tested, the ones that I've seen, there isn't many who truly are looking to automate the proposal creation as a full agent rather than just as a content tool. So the next 3 slides, I will ask everybody to indulge me as I show you quickly in high level what Offerio is, so that you can understand a little bit about what I'm talking about when vendors are now capable of automating their processes. So what is Offerio? Offerio is our AI-powered proposal engine designed specifically for vendors responding to government RFPs. Unlike generic tools that are based on templates and require a lot of copy pasting, it's trained on real procurement frameworks and trained on the company that it's running. So Offerio ensures that every proposal aligns with compliance and scoring logic and formatting standards of the RFP in question, while embracing the uniqueness of the company and the team that's running the tool. So what does Offerio do? It learns from the vendor's successful submissions, generates personalized structured drafts in minutes, protects vendor data with optional secure closed loop environments, making it one of the first AI tools that is built not just to write proposals, but to align the services requested with the services offered through advanced reasoning. That really reduces the gap and helps vendors win more bids. So Offerio automates the revision of an RFP. Imagine a drag and drop. That is essentially what it is. You grab the RFP, you drag it into the system, and it reviews it. And it identifies key information from the proposal, like the overview, timeline requirements, deliverables, budget requirements, specifically requested points of information for grading, and more. All that in order to generate a proposal that is as closely aligned to the RFP requirements as possible, all through machine learning. Once the RFP is reviewed, Offerio will provide an assessment based on what it knows of the vendor. Remember, at this point, the tool has been onboarded, or the client has been fully onboarded to the tool, so knows about the company, about the success stories, about the products, the services, the SOPs, and past bids. And by gathering all this information, it provides an assessment of whether this bid is aligned with the products or services that are provided by the vendor. And it will then recommend services or products that are provided by the vendor in order to satisfy the requirement of the RFP. So it's like a co-pilot. There's a stage where Offerio will provide a recommendation as to whether it has enough information based on the products and services of the vendor to proceed with the bid. If it's missing information, there's a high chance this bid may be out of the scope of the capabilities of the bidder. And so it really helps in reducing the risk factor of a go, no-go decision by the vendor. All of this on a rigorous onboarding, which trains the AI to become the vendor, not just a tool of the vendor, so that it knows all about the company and everything that I mentioned before, in order to provide a good assessment. Once proceeding, it will ask even more specific refinement questions to make sure that it further aligns answers based on the process questions or specific inquiries of the RFP that Offerio's AI engine has identified as highly relevant to the to the RFP, sorry. And then it begins writing. This stage is a combination of automation with customization by the user, and it allows for manual intervention as well, which is very important. This way, the user can manually modify the content by typing or by providing recommendations to Offerio in order to do larger quality changes, content changes, things like, hey, refer to this service or refer to this policy that we have or this process that we do for onboarding or project management or insurance. So where does this leave us? Well, the roadmap of OfferioAI, which is to us the future of AI and procurement, doesn't stop there. The team at OfferioAI is already hard at work, currently developing a new release for Q4 of this year. This is where it may be a lot more interesting for many of you. So we're in the process of working with OfferioAI with a couple of AI partners, particularly in the academic sector. OfferioGov is a secure policy-aligned AI assistant built for procurement teams. Supports the full evaluation lifecycle from triaging vendor submissions to generating score summaries and audit-ready documentation, all while adhering to the procurement rules, privacy standards, FOI requirements. So unlike generic AI tools like ChatGPT and others, OfferioGov operates within your compliance framework, ensuring that every action is transparent, defendable, and designed to make your team faster, not just replace the team, because you don't want to do that. So what does this mean? Having an AI companion that knows the city as well as your engineers, procurement staff, and directors. This allows Offerio to serve as a database to ensure your procurement is connected to your city's realities. Then it allows you to build the RFP, design a gradable scoring matrix that can be executed by reasoning AI, not just standard traditional GPT. This means that if you want to view only the top 60% of the bids received for an RFP, you can have OfferioGov triage the bids and have the reasoning behind why each bid made or didn't make the cut for transparency reporting services. What is the likelihood that Offerio does not give preferences to offers that were written by Offerio? That is a policy question that internally can be decided. No applications built by Offerio, for example. So that is something that they don't communicate. Offerio at the government level lives on its own server, and so it essentially is an agent of the city or your procurement team. So what does that mean? It means that it follows the current framework, and frameworks by far and large are mostly the same. There's specifics within each city, and that's what it would follow in order to ensure. So for example, I have talked to procurement officers, and even when I was doing that, where I would review 100% of them because that is what I felt was good. But then certain procurement officers will say, well, if they don't reach a threshold grade of 60 or 70%, I will not review that. And so that's what Offerio does at that point. It takes into consideration the grading matrix. So that is, I think the coolest thing, because if I receive 300 bids and I only need to review, let's say, the top 60 to top 80, not based on a whim, but based on actual grading metrics. And then if I don't believe the metric, I ask, well, why did this bid not make it? And it provides me the reasoning for it that is now verifiable and auditable. It makes me comfortable with the decision of not having to review that bid. And again, I can just review it if I feel that, it was off base. But what it does do is it provides me that backing to say, hey, this is the reasons why. And that's what's most important, transparency and auditability, obviously. Then we have security. Security is a must. So we use the closed loop on a server LLM, which doesn't share data with SaaS versions of an LLM. So think of this, we're not connecting to OpenAI servers, or, when people are saying, oh my God, somebody's connecting to DeepSeek online and we're getting information in China. That doesn't happen. This means that the reasoning and data used for the actual reasoning work resides in the closed loop private servers. This reduces the risk of hallucination. It increases the reliability of data generated, and it ensures there's no data or IP seepage because it stays within the server that it's meant to stay in. And that is something that we cannot avoid when we're using SaaS-based servers, versus where the risk always remains contained and governed by a specific city's IT policies. It makes sure that we're able to confirm and guarantee the level of safety through processes. And finally, because Offerio is API forward, it can integrate with selected procurement softwares to automatically import and export data as required. So no need to replace Bonfires and Jaegers and SAP and, Sonivas. We're actually able to plug into them, pull data out, which again allows us to work with our frameworks, not just destroy everything and start from everything. So I want to recap on this. These tools aren't replacement for procurement officers. They're force multipliers designed with your constraints in mind. So why AI policy must catch up to AI adoption? We've seen the tech adoption outpace governance before, and I think that I think of the early days of social media, e-commerce, even cloud computing. But this time with AI procurement, the stakes are way higher. This isn't about optimizing ads or user experience. It really is about how taxpayer dollars are spent. If AI is used without proper oversight, bias can creep into the scoring, non-compliant vendors can slip through, transparency that public procurement relies on can erode. That's why the conversation can't just be about what can AI do. It must also be about what AI is allowed to do, under what rules, and what is the guardrails. Because fairness in public spending isn't just a principle, it's the legal and ethical obligation. So how do we catch up to policy? First, procurement teams need clear internal guidelines on acceptable AI use. And I think that we're at that stage where most procurement teams are trying to decide what is proper and what is not when it comes to using AI. Should we use this type of AI? Should we use that type? How much decision making should we allow AI to be involved in? So we need to identify not just whether AI can be used or not, because then we will run into the situation where people will be using it secretively or clandestinely. And we need to make sure that we empower people to use the tools that they have available. So it's not whether it can be used, but how, for what tasks, what is the accountability? Second, AI tools deployed in procurement should be held to the same standard as vendors: auditable, privacy compliance, performance benchmarking. It's a must. And third, governments should create AI readiness frameworks that align with procurement modernization agendas. This includes staff training, ethical oversight boards, sandbox environments, which I find extremely important. And that's where public sector tools can be tested safely before deploying at scale. It's astonishing how that is not an even more front and center topic. I believe it's huge. But most of all, we need to make sure that the mission is clear. For good or bad, on whatever side of the coin you're on, AI tools are here and they're here to stay. And they're here to supercharge processes in government, including procurement, so that the teams that got used to doing more with less can now do more and level the playing field between expectation and reality, or expectation of what is expected of them and the reality. So let's look at a little bit of vision forward. What does ethical, effective AI-powered procurement look in the next 5 years? So let's imagine the near future, not a distant dream, but a realistic, responsible direction for procurement. Real-time bid grading with audit trails. So procurement teams are able to grade submissions in real time, with every decision logged for audit purposes. This doesn't mean human element is removed. It just means that your decisions are faster, more consistent, and more defendable. We're talking about technology that tracks every scoring choice, provides rational summaries, supports accountability, not replaces it. Vendor AI that adapts to public frameworks. Most competitive vendors will be using AI that understands your frameworks. I've had tons of conversations. I have friends that work at large organizations like Deloitte, and they've had their own internal AI systems for years, where they can use them for searching and building reports and whatnot. And they are not allowed to use public-facing tools like ChatGPT. They have to use, I don't remember precisely what their ChatGPT version is called, but it's theirs. So the AI that they implement understands the frameworks. And that's what we have to be doing. Whether it's a municipal scoring matrix, whether it's a federal compliance checklist, regional procurement policy, this just means that the public sector evaluators need tools that are equally aligned. Otherwise, we're judging precision engineered proposals with outdated processes. And that's a recipe for disaster. And then smart platforms like Offerio acting as co-pilots, not necessarily decision makers. I truly believe, being in AI for the amount of time that I've been in, and advocating for ethical and sustainable AI implementation throughout, that AI should never take the wheel. It should absolutely sit in the passenger seat, though. And tools like Offerio and others that are on the market aren't here to replace procurement professionals. They're designed to remove the friction so professionals can focus on strategy, fairness, judgment. It's about human-led AI-supported procurement. And that's where technology helps every member of the team do a better job, faster, with greater confidence. And that's a future we're working towards, not automation for automation's sake. I find that that is, that is a beautiful headline. It's more automation to be smarter, a more ethical public procurement ecosystem that's responsive to the tools already shaping the vendor side. So let me leave you with some closing points, and then I'll get to some of the questions. We are standing at a defining moment for public procurement. AI is not theoretical anymore; it's operational. Vendors are using it. Private industry is moving extremely fast, and the question for government is no longer if, it's how. I live in a space of two countries. I'm currently living in Miami-Dade. Part of our team is in Miami, and part of our team is in Canada. Canada just went through an election. And one of the things that every candidate was talking about is implementing AI to improve government processes, reduce waiting times, increase efficiencies. So the conversation is out there already. So the solution isn't to resist or rush, it's to lead, to shape this new ecosystem with ethics, transparency, and the public interest at the center. That means tools with built-in accountability, policies that empower, not restrict, and the systems that enhance judgment are way better than the systems that override it. So as procurement professionals, even when I was one, we have always had to balance risk with innovation, compliance, flexibility, and the value of integrity. But AI introduces a new kind of pressure, one that's unfolding in real time across sectors and often a little bit outside our control. So we're not preparing for a distant technological future. We're responding to a present that's already accelerating. Vendors are adapting faster. Automation is no longer optional, and public procurement, for all its checks and balances, can no longer afford to lag behind. So here's the opportunity. We've been here before, and we've seen what happens when innovation outpaces policy, and we've learned the cost of catching up too late. This time, we have a chance to shape the framework as it's being built, to define what's ethical and effective in AI procurement and what it should look like before it's defined us or it's defined for us. And that means asking the right questions today. Who owns the logic behind the AI scored bids? How do we ensure fairness when decisions are assisted by algorithms? What training and oversight is needed for AI to serve, not subvert, the procurement process? The answers, they don't come from a single platform, policy, or agency. They'll come from collaboration, from conversations like this one, from procurement leaders, technologists, legal experts, and communities coming together to define the standards that reflect our shared values. So, because in 5 years, we'll look back on this moment as either the turning point where public procurement led the shift or the moment where we let it happen to us. And I believe, again, having been in the shoes of many of you, I would prefer to choose leadership, choose clarity, and let's help define the procurement systems and AI tools by taking a position of leadership so that we can stand behind with pride and accountability and purpose what we've been able to implement for procurement processes in the future. And with that, I want to thank everybody for their attention. A little bit of a question and answer. I'll try to look at some of the questions here. And Charles, if you want to chime in here as well, that'd be great.
So this is going to be the first question from Kathy here in the chat. Said, should we begin asking if and which AI tool offers used in responding to IFBs and RFPs and our RFPs and IFBs?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, so the question is, should we begin asking if and which AI tool offers use in responding to IFBs and RFPs and our RFPs and IFBs?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because each one of them requires different things. I think that each organization will approach that topic very uniquely. I know organizations that, very rarely will offer an RFQ, for example. They'll either issue an RFI or an RFP. And so that is more a matter of, I guess, internal policy and how that is adapted, right? And it really depends on the security structure as well as to what they're asking for. That's hope I'm answering that question based on what I understood from it.
Another question is there a risk that AI will replace the human judgment aspect of procurement?
And so that's a good question. I get that question a lot, and I think that that's why I mentioned before that AI should not be in the driver's seat. It should be definitely in the passenger seat. I mean, the reality is that we make better decisions with more information, but there's also something very common, which is information overload. And so at times, using the tools that we have at hand to be able to refine that data and be able to sort of reduce the clutter and ensure that we have the key elements necessary to make a decision can only help us make better decisions. I don't believe that AI has a quote unquote agenda. That's why the whole, ask your chat GPT, please. Because I heard it from somebody, and I don't recall who it was, but it said that AI is a master impersonator. It'll take the persona of the person that you build it out to be. So if you build it out to be a subject matter expert in something, or a very caring persona, or a very technical persona, it will actually um, embrace that and give that back to you. So it's only meant to be an added value tool to the person that uses it. We should never be tempted to just say, hey, just make the decision for me and thank you very much, because that is very much a recipe for disaster.
The question is, I'm not sure if it's meant for the chat or for Lewis, but
Yeah.
is data you enter into MS Copilot contained?
Um, that's a very good question. So I'll give you the official line, and I'll give you the non-official line. MS Copilot, ChatGPT, Professional, obviously the paid versions and everything. They all have in their service agreement that statement that says that we do not share data, we do not, use data for training, and we do it at the best of our ability and whatnot. So officially, it should be contained. Unofficially, we have seen cases where certain information is passed on by inference rather than by direct transfer. I think that Copilot may do a little bit of a better job, just because when you're working on an enterprise level, it'll be your own server at a certain level. And so that, combined with Entra and all those other factors, make it a little bit more protected. Um, on the flip side, from the AI world, Copilot is probably the least reasoning AI in the market. So it's more of a production workhorse rather than a reasoning tool. So it has its pros, it has its cons.
Yeah, so another question is, do you have any recommendations for how a smaller entity can implement or experiment with AI, responsibly?
Very good question. We fall under the caveat of availability. So something that we've encountered is on the vendor side of Offerio, we have two versions of Offerio, with the third one rolling out very soon. One is Offerio GPT, and the other one is Offerio Pro. And so Offerio GPT will use OpenAI's servers. What does that do? Provides a more general approach to content creation and reasoning, um, faster, much faster, and way more affordable. Then you have the Pro version. The Pro version uses a closed loop on a private server. Everything is contained. The price is quasi 5 to 6 fold of the GPT version. So all that is to say is that there are options out there that you can play with within reasonable and maintaining reasonable levels of security through OpenAI servers or other types of servers that will allow smaller municipalities and, let's call it purchasing groups, to be able to start putting their feet into AI, and maintaining a sort of a cap on their expenses.
We're going to another question here. So I see everyone has been discussing RFP, but I'm not hearing anything about regular ITB or RFQ or design build or CMAR. These are the solicitations that we use most.
And you know what? Thank you for that. The only answer I have to that is that we are not, as an industry, at a stage where there is one silver bullet that addresses everything. And this is why we are at the baby stages of the technology. And so we've now been able, as an industry, to master um, general artificial intelligence. And now we're starting to enter the space of specific case or specific industry applied reasoning and intelligence. So that's where we are at. And again, thank you for bringing the, regular ITBs or RFQs or design bid, because of the fact that um, the the industry is catching up. And so, yeah, tools like Offerio, tools like there's a couple of others that I'm aware of. They are doing RFIs, RFQs, RFPs. They may not be at the ITBs just yet. Stay tuned. I would tell you, wait a couple of months, and chances are there'll be a solution out there for it.
All right, so we got time maybe for one more question, and then we have our raffle. So here's a question from Tim. So how are agencies addressing vendor submissions that appear to be generated using AI, specific bid, RFP language, reject, beyond the obvious signs like overly complex or verbose language? What are some key indicators that a response may be AI generated?
I find that I actually met someone very recently who got let go of their company, and they were a proposal writer, and they got let go because management thought that they could replace them with ChatGPT. And that was literally the argument there. Um, and so what ends up happening with AI generated content is that it's still missing that um, personalized touch. It's missing the nuances and the details. ChatGPT will, if you ever try it, take an RFP, put it into ChatGPT, say answer this proposal. Best you'll get is point form answers. Best you'll get is very generic answers. And what you're wanting to look, and I guess what I was looking for when I was on the procurement side, was an understanding that the company that I was working with knew what they were doing. So some of the RFPs or the RFIs that I was issuing were very numbers and technical based. It didn't require narrative explanations, but there are some that do require narrative explanations and require an explanation on what is your project management approach, or what is what differentiates your service or whatnot. And I think that that is where you should look into it. There are tools I have seen online that allow you to detect AI generated content, but that's being sort of like circumvented by people saying, okay, ChatGPT, create me this content, then they'll put it into Copilot and rewrite it, and then go back to ChatGPT and rewrite it again. So they're putting so much layers that now it's not as transparent. There is no black and white answer. So I think at that point, that's where the human factor comes in. And again, this is why we should not let AI drive the car, but just be a passenger and be a tool for better decision making. Because an experienced procurement professional will see through a bad proposal, will see through BS, will see through a bunch of these things. And I believe that they will see through, you know, generic RFP language made by an AI.
All right. So I know there's some questions we didn't get to. Sorry about that. But first, I'd like to thank Lewis. Thank you everyone for participating. And we'd like to continue this conversation. We have insight. We built, it's all ready for us, the 2025 VCon. With your questions, if you could submit your questions on there, let's continue the conversation there. Remember, this session is available for 60 days. And let's get ready for our raffle. Justin, do we have our two winners? Can you make an announcement?
Yes, thank you, Charles. Now the time everyone has been waiting for. Drum roll, please. First winner is Olivia Simpson, City of Houston. Olivia, you're our first winner. And our second winner is Garrett Gillespie, City of Tucson. Congratulations. We'll be in touch soon.
We have Olivia and Garrett. All right. So we will be reaching out to those two. Again, thank you, Lewis. Great presentation. Thank you, everybody. This concludes VCon 2025 and our next big event. Hope to see you at Forum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.